Today we're talking about the heart. The heart is basically a pump. A pump to what? Pump blood to where? The lungs, and pump where? Out into the peripheral. We must have this process working continuously, otherwise the cells, which is all we are made of, will not have what? Oxygenated blood and the ability to get rid of waste, which is mainly carbon dioxide and other byproducts. So let's review the heart in a simple process. We have the right side of the heart and we have the left side of the heart. The right side of the heart has what? Two atriums, right and left. Then we have the two ventricles. Let's start with the right atrium. We have right atrium with blood passing where? Through the tricuspid valve into the right ventricle, pumping through what? The pulmonary valve, going out the pulmonary artery to where? The lungs. Why is the pulmonary artery bringing over? It's bringing over carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide to be what? Filtered how? Out of the lungs, out into the air, and we're then exchanging carbon dioxide on the hemoglobin of the RBC for what? O2 to be coming back what? The pulmonary vein. Right through here, the pulmonary vein then comes where? Into the left atrium, and then passes through the bicuspid valve into the left ventricle to then be pumped out what? The aorta. The aorta then leads oxygen where? To the peripheral. I mean all over the body via what? Our arterial system of the blood system. So the veins, once we pump all this blood out, what happens? There's a conversion. There's a conversion of what? Oxygen for the cells, and the cells say, hey, I have some waste products, can you please get rid of what? This CO2. And then we go down the what? Or we go back, the return, the venous return, up the vena cava to what? Back to the heart to do what? To pump blood, carbon dioxygen filled blood, where? Back to the lung. We pump it back over to the lung, then we pump it via the pulmonary artery. We exchange what? The gases, CO2 and O2, and then after that we return to the pulmonary vein. I know this is backwards, however this is how it is. We return to what? The left atrium to then pump oxygen, oxygenated blood out the pulmonary artery to where? The peripheral. You must understand this process. The right side of the heart pumps what? CO2 to where? The lungs. The CO2 is converted, or exchanged rather, to O2 and is then pumped back to the left side of the heart and then out the coronary artery for the body to what? Then use the oxygen as the nutrient that it needs. I have written down all the basic steps. You must know this is in order, and it's very important to know which valve is on which side of the heart, because if you look, the pressure on the left side of the heart is about 120. The pressure on the right side, ventricle especially, is about 25. So there is an imbalance in pressure because we're dealing with what? The vein and its return. As it finally comes out of the heart, it has accelerated the pressure to what? Pump as hard as it can through the aorta. Why does it have to pump so much harder with so much more pressure and force? Because it has to go to the peripheral. I mean, we're talking about the feet, we're talking about the hands, we're talking about everywhere. So the important thing is, this is the pumping system. But what causes the pump? There's an electrical system called the SA node and the AV node. Think of these as what? Nerve fibers. And they send what? Nerve signals for what? The heart to constrict, the heart muscle to constrict. And we need to know how this works. The heart muscle constricts, and we get what? Blood pumping throughout the body. So it's very simple. The heart must fill up with what? Blood. And it fills up on what? Both sides, albeit that we just discussed that it in a simple way, it goes right to left, but remember they do it simultaneously. The right side is filling up with blood to go to where? The lungs. The left side of the heart is filling up with blood to where? Go to the peripheral, carrying oxygen. So what happens on an EKG when we monitor this? We see a P wave. That is the atriums filling up with blood and then allowing the valves to open for what? The ventricles then to fill up with what? We have the atrium squeezing, what? Blood into the ventricles. Then the valves are next closing to then what? Constriction of the ventricles out, one, the pulmonary artery, and then the aorta, which is the right and left side. And so we're going to notice this as what? Let's review. The P wave on an EKG is the atriums filling up with blood and then passing it where? Through the QR wave. What's happening in the heart right now? We're filling up with blood where? In the ventricles. Then there's a constriction, and what happens? We pump the blood. The heart pumps both the right and left at the same time, and then it has to relax, reset electrically, and that is the T wave. And you will see this absent, especially in a myocardial infarct or an acceleration or length of time here. So what are we generally looking at? The P, Q, R, S, T waves for what? The EKG. To tell us how the electrical, the nervous system of the heart is working. So if it fails and we don't see a P wave, the SA node is not quite working, and we can suspect what? That we may have, if this is irregular, some atrial fib, but we're not having the atrium doing what? Helping us pump. If the QRS is not apparent, what happened? The ventricle did not open and close properly. Ventricles did not open and close properly. So we call that a heart block. Basically, we didn't pump anything. We did, but we didn't. We're waiting on what? The next pump that works electrically correct, that QRS wave to happen to pump the blood. And then finally, we will see a PVC. This happens under stress, and the QRS wave will be inverted. It will be inverted, and so then we're confused. The heart is, and it misfires due to what? The extra adrenaline due to stress. So let's review real quickly. Why do we have an EKG? Oh, around P1 we're going to hear what? The lub, and then around the T wave we're going to hear the dub. Okay? So the P wave is what? That's the atrium. The QRS, that's the big up and down thing that we always see on the EKG. Those are the ventricles, opening and closing. And then the T wave is resetting. So if we have a problem where this is irregular, then we're looking at the atrium. If we have an inversion or a big extended electrical field or a big wide gap, we have a problem with what? The timing of the ventricles. Or if we have a real long time or no T wave at all, then the heart's not resetting for what? Electrical firing to do what? To start all over again with the PQRS. So the T wave is the reset, the P wave is the start, and the QRS is the ventricles. As you can see through these pictures, here we're filling up with blood. That's dealing with the P. Then we have some constriction to push the blood where? Into the ventricles. And then out of the ventricles, what? That's the QRS wave. Right here, we're pushing it through the pulmonary artery and the aorta to go out where? One to the lung and one to the rest of the body. So what must we learn from this whole process? That the coronary arteries that supply what? The blood to the heart, the oxygen to the heart, are right here off the aorta. So as if we have right-sided heart failure, what will happen? And this is very simple. The right-sided failure does what? The right is less than the left, meaning now all of a sudden we're pumping more fluid out. Where? The left ventricle is putting out more fluid than the right, which is pretty bad in sense of volume. And we have fluid accumulation where? In the peripheral. Edema down where? In our ankles and in our legs. If the right side is pumping greater than the left, we'll have fluid accumulating where? In the pulmonary. Why? We just said the right side pumps where? Pumps blood where? It pumps blood to the lungs. And if this is not able to come back fast enough, volume-wise, to the left side, what's going to happen? We're going to have fluid accumulation right here because it's not happening fast enough. Now remember, the pressure is a big difference. So we have a lot of pressure on the left side of the heart because we have to pump it through what? The whole arterial system. The venous system doesn't have a lot of pressure. It's a return system based upon blood flow of what? The right side pushing, and you can think of it as the left side pulling if you wish. So if the left side, the left ventricle, is pushing harder than the right, we're going to pump what? A lot of blood out into the peripheral, but we see this all the time. The peripheral, the blood coagulates, meaning edema, and the blood is trying to come up the venous system through the vena cava to return to the heart. However, it's what? Having a problem, so we get fluid accumulation called edema, wear in our ankles. So you need to understand this process and think about why this would happen. It's a simple pump. We have a pump to the lungs to get what? An oxygen exchange of CO2 and O2. And we have a pump where? Out to the body to get what? O2 to all the cells and all the other organs. So we know that we have a PQRST wave. That is the electrical input to the heart via the SA node and the AV node to tell us what? To tell the heart electrically to constrict in a timing fashion to create the pump that will happen correctly. So if it's not happening correctly, you will see it on the EKG. You can hear what? S1 and S2. So if you hear a click, what is the concern? One of the valves is not closing correctly. If you hear a whoosh whoosh, you will hear what? A murmur. And so one of the valves is leaking. So you won't necessarily notice it on the EKG until it becomes significant. But the blood pressure, when we monitor the blood pressure, the systolic and the diastolic is how hard it's pushing, and the diastolic, the bottom number on the blood pressure, is how much the ventricle is relaxing. And what are we monitoring? That 120 number on which side? The left ventricle, and then how much it's relaxing. So what are we looking for? 120 over 70. If we see a number of 160 over 70, we know we're pushing a lot harder than we should. If we see a number of 130 over 90, we know that the ventricle is not relaxing like it should. And hence there's a problem with what? Some of the valve and some of what down here? Some of the back pressure that we're dealing with, and that's how we get edema created either in the lung or in the heart. So please be familiar with the difference of an EKG, what is visually happening to the heart when the EKG is happening, and be familiar with the blood pattern of how it comes in the heart, both sides at the same time, and which side goes to where. The right side has CO2 and it goes to the lung. The left side has what? It has O2 and it goes to the artery to provide what? O2 to the body. Where does it go? The aorta. What is it returned by? The vena cava. Okay? We just need to review this lesson over and over again to understand the basic process of the heart being a pump to get blood where? To the exchange at the lung, because we need what? We need O2 and we need to get rid of CO2. So if I don't have enough RBCs, what's going to happen? I'm going to pump what? Faster because I'm not getting enough exchange of what? O2 on the hemoglobin because I don't have enough red blood cells. So I will have what? Some signs of tachycardia because I'm increasing what? The volume that I'm trying to get concentration in what? The lungs to exchange that for that oxygen. So just think about, why are we in the lung? For oxygen and getting rid of CO2. Why are we in the heart? That's to pump the blood where? Out to the body, and then to what? Return via the venous system to what? Then get reoxygenated and pumped out again. Please ask or email any questions, but understand and be able to label all the basic parts of the heart. It doesn't have to be this articulate, just that there's a right and left what? Atrium, right and left ventricle, which valves are in between that, and where does it go to? Does the right side go to the lung, and the left side goes where? To the body through the aorta.